Incredible twist, 3 military dogs expose racist cops, inspiring a hidden courage within. Jake Thompson stood on the porch of his family farmhouse, staring across the wide fields that had always felt like a sanctuary. The golden grass swayed gently under the sun, invoking memories of laughter and freedom from a simpler time. But the creaks of the old house echoed with haunting reminders of distant gunshots and the cries of comrades he couldn't save, embedding a heaviness deep within his chest. He had fought for his country, yet felt like an alien in his own skin. His eyes flickered to the 3 abandoned military dogs huddled together in the yard. They were rough around the edges, with scars that mirrored his own, and something about their silent pain resonated with him. As he kneeled to greet them, a surge of warmth filled the empty hollowness of his heart. Maverick, Luna, and Scout. They didn't need words. Their eyes spoke the unshakable bond of shared trauma. Training them became a refuge, a way to weave new purpose from the remnants of his shattered self. But as he poured his energy into their training, the peace he sought was marred by unsettling developments in the town. On the periphery, he could feel tension simmering. A community cleaved by economic hardship and festering prejudices trembled beneath the surface, ripe for conflict. One morning, while jogging with Maverick, Jake stumbled upon a scene that knocked the breath from his lungs. He watched as a group of teens, barely older than children, were cornered by officers with hostility burning in their eyes. The adrenaline surged in him. An instinct honed during his service screamed that injustice was unfolding. His muscles tensed. A part of him wanted to intervene, but fear seared through him. What if he was the next target? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications, so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The same vulnerability he felt crept into his gut as Maverick whined, perfectly trained to react to injustice. Jake instinctively reached for him, but the growl that rolled from the dog's throat turned his stomach to ice. A cell phone camera zoomed in, capturing the officer's aggression. The video went viral within hours, and as the town watched with divided eyes, Jake was thrust into the eye of a raging storm. Whispers grew louder in coffee shops. Tension split him from neighbors he once considered friends. He longed for solitude, but knew this was no longer just about him. The foundation of his town, the very essence of who they were, now hinged on his choices, each one fraught with the weight of history and righteousness. The phone vibrated on his kitchen table with an ominous message, shooting daggers of fear through him. "Stay out of this, Thompson. You don't belong here anymore." He felt the chill wrap around his spine, paralyzing his limbs. The weight of loyalty to his community weighed heavily on his shoulders, yet the ache for justice burned brighter than anything he'd faced in combat. His heart raced, a cacophony of doubts colliding. Jake's resolve, once so resolute, now felt fractured. As the shadows of his past began to intertwine with the darkness of his present, he stood at a precipice, all too aware that stepping forward could either ignite a spark of change or plunge him into isolation. Would he find the courage to fight alongside the dogs who reflected his struggles, or would fear strip him of the voice he had just begun to reclaim? The heart of a community awaited his answer, while he grappled with his own demons, now more alive than ever. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he set his phone down, the darkness of the message lingering like a bitter aftertaste. The walls of his farmhouse felt like they were closing in, pressing him to the crossroads of cowardice and courage. Each sense heightened. He could hear the distant rustle of the wind through the grass, the soft whines of the dogs who seemed to mirror his turmoil. Maverick nudged him gently with his snout, grounding him to the present. In those deep brown eyes, Jake recognized a raw appetite for action, a readiness to confront whatever lay ahead. The thought propelled him into a scorching urgency. Instead of succumbing to fear, could he transform it into something that propelled a shift, not just for himself, but for others? The initial apprehension was palpable, yet with every heartbeat, a flicker of determination rekindled within him. He flared his nostrils as anxiety surged. The fear was like a weight he had carried through the combat zones, yet here it morphed. Rather than fear leading to paralysis, he calculated potential responses, grappling with shifting priorities: the dogs, the community, justice. He set off toward the field that stretched beyond his farmhouse, the golden grass now a canvas for his resolve. Maverick followed closely, as though feeling the urgency of his owner's mental retreat. He needed to clear his thoughts, to create a strategy befitting the man he had once been, the soldier who fielded impossible decisions in the heat of battle. As he jogged, the rhythm of his feet hitting the earth synchronized with his racing thoughts. Jake stopped, eyes scanning the landscape. The town wasn't merely a backdrop, it was rife with unspoken narratives, each whisper in the cafes infused with history and pain. Could he be the catalyst for change? The confrontation wouldn't just entail speaking out against injustice. It meant confronting his own internalized fears and doubts. During their training sessions, Jake had seen remarkable growth in Maverick, Luna, and Scout. Their abilities had stemmed from trust, unwavering loyalty to each other. He realized that teaching the dogs was as much about finding himself as it was about their skill development. So too could his journey signal a mutual awakening. He could help find their voices while reclaiming his. As evening fell, he returned home. The sky streaked with shades of orange and purple, signifying yet another day where the tension remained unresolved. Adrenaline surged through him as Jake sat at the table, his fingers hovering above the keyboard. He recognized that honesty had the power to spark connection. A video post began to take shape in his mind, not just addressing the contentious situation, but laying bare his own vulnerabilities. What he didn't know, what he had masked with bravado, was ready to emerge. He observed how storytelling resonated with others, how it could illuminate shared struggles. Could he channel his experiences in ways that might speak to those who felt voiceless? An internal battle raged. Would he allow shadows from his military past to dictate his future, or could he draw strength from that history to foster understanding? The dogs bounded in, their energy infectious, coaxing a hesitant smile from him. As he watched them play, he realized change would require more than just words. It demanded action, something that aligned with the truth he now sought to embrace. When he finally pressed record, heart-pounding, Jake understood this was more than a plea for justice. It was a declaration of a new chapter, not only for him, but for the town. The moment hung in the balance, and in that tension, he sensed something monumental was about to unfold. Just as he was about to share his truth, a harsh knock echoed through the farmhouse, shaking the fragile tranquility he had begun to cultivate. Who could it be? Anxiety pooled thickly in his stomach again, uninvited yet familiar. The pivotal moment had arrived. Could he seize it, or would fear once again insist on silencing him? The decisions he made now reverberated far beyond the shadows of his past, beckoning change in ways he had yet to fathom. Jake froze at the sound of the knock, the moment suspended in a mixture of disbelief and dread. The walls of the farmhouse, which had begun to feel like a sanctuary, now pulsated with the weight of possibilities, both thrilling and frightening. The dogs seemed to recognize the shift in energy, their playful banter subsiding into focused attention. Maverick stood alert, his ears perked, a silent sentinel by Jake's side. Those knocks weren't casual, they carried urgency, a demand for action. Action Jake was now teetering on the edge of, having already revealed part of himself into the realm of vulnerability. Glancing back at the unforgiving glare of the phone screen, he considered abandoning his initial plan. What if confronting the harsh realities of his past led to more danger than he was prepared to face? But the knock came again, more insistent this time, breaking the tether of his indecision. Drawing in a deep breath, Jake steeled himself. He stepped toward the door, each movement igniting a swell of apprehension and adrenaline. Who was waiting on the other side? With a cautious hand, he turned the knob and pulled the door open. "Jake!" a voice greeted him, familiar yet shrouded in a tense energy. It was Deputy Collins, a long-standing figure in the department, one that had seen both ups and downs in the small community. "We need to talk." Behind him, a couple of other men in uniforms loomed large, their presence imposing. Jake's chest tightened instinctively. Here was authority that he felt at odds with, a horrifying embodiment of what he had contemplated exposing in his video. "What's going on?" he asked, nervousness threading his voice. "Can we come in?" Collins gestured toward the porch. The request sounded polite, but Jake sensed an urgency underpinning his demeanor. Holding his breath, he stepped aside to let them in, curiosity battling the turmoil in his gut. "First off, I need you to remain calm," Collins began, his face stern yet earnest. He glanced toward the dogs briefly before focusing back on Jake. "There's something happening in town. We've received some troubling reports, and it feels bigger than what we can handle internally." "Troubling? Like what?" Jake felt the tension coiling tighter as they all settled into the modest living room. "There are accusations pointing towards a group of officers involved in some serious misconduct, racial profiling, intimidation, and even physical threats. And we believe it could escalate." Words pushed against Jake like a stone wall, threatening to suffocate him. This was the storm he had tentatively planned to address. Yet here it was, crashing into his world unceremoniously, throwing him into the center stage he had both sought and dreaded. "Is there anything you can do?" Jake's voice was shaky, but filled with a burgeoning sense of responsibility. "We can't let this be swept under the rug." Collins exchanged a look with the other deputies. "That's what we would like your help with." Their eyes aimed at Jake with an unexpected intensity. "You've been through things that could help us get to the bottom of this. Your military background, your dogs, they could provide an advantage, especially if we set up an operation to gather evidence." The urge to recoil washed over him. Could he truly be a catalyst for change? The thought of aligning himself with an institution he had grown skeptical of forced Jake's heart into a rapid flutter. "Look, I know these discussions aren't easy, but bringing this to light, actually exposing it, could mean more than what you think," Collins pressed. "People look up to you, Jake. They feel the weight of their pain, and together we can make them feel heard." His mind raced, each thought colliding in frenetic chaos. The struggles he had felt, now intertwined with individuals in real danger. Yet to answer them meant confronting trepidations he had insufficiently dealt with. Was this the path he truly wanted to take? Before Jake could voice his concerns, Maverick stood, pulling closer, as if sensing the rising tension. The dogs leaned into him, their instincts guiding them as much as his heart began to race at the collision of risks versus rewards. This wasn't just an accusation they were addressing. It was the opportunity for him to leave behind the shadows of doubt and become the strength for others. With every moment passing, Jake felt the tether to his military past becoming a lifeline instead of a shackle. The decision loomed large, calling forth not just courage, but transformation. Would he stand up as he had once done for strangers? Or would he remain an observer, tangled in fear? "Okay," Jake finally said, resolve hardening like steel. "Tell me what I need to do." But as the plan unfolded before him, one thought burned brighter than any fear in his mind. What if exposing this darkness led to more peril than anticipated? With the details of the operation laid out before him, Jake felt surreal, as if he were standing on the edge of a precipice. Collins explained how they would gather evidence discreetly and safely, capitalizing on Jake's familiarity with the area and his relationship with Maverick. Each point struck him with a mixture of excitement and crippling anxiety. This wasn't merely a strategy, it was a compelling invitation to step fully into a role he was still unsure he could play. In the following days, he oscillated between deep contemplation and bursts of action. His mornings now began with rigorous training sessions with Maverick and the other dogs. His heart pounded as he took the weight of responsibility into stride, monitoring their agility and response. He had learned to train others in combat. Now it was time to channel that same focus into honing skills that could amplify the partnership between a man and his four-legged allies. The dogs, naturally adept, gained confidence with every drill. Jake felt a strange kinship with them. They, too, had faced history that weighed upon them, and they partnered with him without question. Each session pushed him further, not only as a trainer, but as someone who could take charge of the unfolding narrative. With every commanding word he issued, a thread of conviction grew tighter within him. He could influence the outcome. As he connected with Collins and the team more deeply, Jake found himself enveloped in a sense of camaraderie he had missed since his time in the military. He shared stories of past missions, highlighting tactical decisions that reflected both his experience and a deeper understanding of what was at stake. They were listening. They needed him. But what surprised him most was the accelerating realization that he needed them too. He felt unshackled from self-doubt, his identity transitioning from a passive observer to an active participant. Yet the unease persisted. Every night, images of potential fallout spiraled through his mind. What if his decisions led to an escalation he couldn't handle? Would he be able to protect his family, his community? Would his part in this operation expose not only the truth, but also reignite old demons that were better left buried? Shadows of false betrayals flickered like ghosts behind closed eyelids. The anxiety transformed into determination. He began documenting his thoughts, acknowledging his fears, but framing them within a context of preparation and acceptance. Each entry became a declaration. He would not falter. He was accountable not just for himself, but as a representation of those victims who feared their truth would remain hidden. Then a breakthrough. During a training exercise, one of the deputies, a keen strategist named Henry, discovered something pivotal. Jake, what if we used the dogs as an unexpected element to divert attention while we conduct surveillance? Their strength is undeniable, but their presence could offer a form of distraction that can vitalize our plan, he suggested, his eyes bright with revelation. The thought resonated. Perhaps this was their angle. Reinventing the operational model through the dogs could showcase their value not only as witnesses, but as integral parts of the solution. It felt instinctive, as if their synergy with the animals could defy expectations. As they began considering this new approach, the clock seemed to tick faster. The stakes multiplied, and Jake braced for the upcoming moments when his resolve would face fierce scrutiny. This wasn't merely about change, it was about survival in the most fundamental terms. Jake woke up one morning, his resolve steely. He looked out at the pasture where Maverick and the others dashed joyfully, clarity cutting through the fog of uncertainty. He was willing to risk everything, not just to expose the dark side of law enforcement, but to ignite a spark in so many he had unconsciously aligned with. The day of the operation loomed. Tension simmered in the air like an approaching storm. Just as he began to breathe steadier, his phone buzzed with a text from Collins. "We need to talk. Something urgent has come up regarding our witnesses." Jake's heart rate quickened. What was this twist? What could possibly destabilize their already precarious plan? Time felt both endless and fleeting, and his journey into the unknown expanded right before him. No longer just an ambition, but a fight he could not back away from. Jake's heart raced as he stared at the glimmering screen of his phone. Colin's words carried an urgency that struck like a cold wind against his resolve. He had prepared for many scenarios, gathering evidence, coordinating with the team, managing the dogs. But this felt different. Something was shifting beneath the surface, and the thought that it could derail their plans sent waves of dread through him. He caught his breath and steeled himself against the rising tide of anxiety. Jake had weathered storms before. Navigating crises had been part of his training. But this felt more personal. The lives at stake were not just cases to crack open, but families to protect, hopes to uplift, and truths waiting to be brought into the light. He had taken on a mantle that felt heavy but invigorating, and he couldn't afford to let doubt choke his determination. The shadows of the past lingered, whispering self-doubt. What if he failed? What if this entire effort unraveled because he overlooked a detail or lost the team's faith? Yet, as he breathed in the crisp morning air, he found clarity, a clarity sparked by the bond he had formed with the very beings he was training. Maverick, along with the other dogs, were not mere tools but symbols of resilience, determination, and partnership. They were living proof that strength can emerge from struggle, and that drove him forward. After responding to Collins with a calculated, "On my way," Jake gathered his gear while mentally organizing his thoughts. The unfolding situation could either be the fracture point or the moment where he galvanized his commitment into something transcendent. He imagined the dogs alert and ready, visualizing how their presence could tip the balance of fear towards strength. As he drove toward the meeting place, he reflected on the alliance he had built with his team. The consent of bond and purpose was at the heart of their mission. He recalled the days spent in training, infusing the dogs with purpose and enabling them to mirror his intent. That sense of community had stoked an ember in him, fueling his emergence as a proactive force. When Jake arrived, Collins stood with arms crossed, his face clouded by concern. "We received a tip-off about one of our witnesses. They're feeling the pressure to back out," he said. The words hung heavy, like a weight tossed into the pit of Jake's stomach. He needed to rally the team, to remind them that every person drawn into this audacious act was integral to unraveling the narrative of power and fear. "How do we re-engage them?" Jake asked, feeling a sense of urgency swell not just within him but in the room. Collins glanced at the group they had assembled, a tapestry of their eclectic backgrounds and varied skills. "We need to show them there's more at stake than their immediate safety. Their stories can resonate beyond these walls. They can inspire others." It was a spark, a sense of purpose igniting within Jake. What if we could involve the dogs in another way? Their presence could extend beyond distraction. They could embody the courage we're seeking to inspire. The idea took shape in his mind. If they could directly link the dogs to the testimony of the witness, it might bolster their resolve. A murmur of agreement rippled through the team. Jake's pulse quickened. Hope was revitalizing a path once shrouded by concern. Ideas cascaded around the room as they brainstormed ways to re-engage their witness and capture media attention. It felt invigorating, as if they were not merely preparing for a fight but engaging in a mission steeped in purpose. But all of their plans hinged on the success of their next move. Jake's heart beat loudly as he recognized the gravity of what lay ahead. They needed to harness this momentum, for the stakes were greater than personal ambition or the desire for justice. It was about creating a legacy of fortitude, one that could ripple through countless lives. The operation hovered like a looming shadow. As the team finalized their plans, Jake found himself wondering about the future. The ghosts of self-doubt and fear briefly flickered, but he subdued them with determination. However, just as he felt ready to stride forward into the fray, a chilling text buzzed on his phone. "We just got wind that someone on the inside may know about our operation. We need to act fast." Deep breath. The game had escalated, and Jake felt the pressure mounting. He clenched his jaw, whispering a silent promise to Maverick that they would forge ahead. Together, they would face whatever emerged next. They were a force, and this reckoning called not just for personal courage, but a resolve that could shake foundations. Jake could feel it in his bones. The time had come to confront the very truths that had haunted him, the lies that needed revealing, and the courage that awaited discovery as they pressed into the unknown. Jake's mind raced with the implications of the new revelation. The idea that an insider might be aware of their operation rattled the foundations of everything he and his team had built. This wasn't just a test of resolve. It was a plunge into treacherous waters where trust could easily give way to betrayal. He turned to Collins, whose worry mirrored his own. "We need a contingency plan. If someone knows about us, we can't afford to be cornered. Our next move must be calculated." Collins nodded, his brow furrowing. "We can't let fear dictate our actions, but we also can't ignore the risk. We need to find out who this is and what they know before we proceed." Jake appreciated Collins's strategic approach, but the urgency gnawed at him. Each moment felt like sand slipping through an hourglass. His thoughts drifted back to the dogs, Maverick and the other canines with whom he had built a visceral, unspoken bond. Their innate ability to sense tension before it escalated reminded him that instinct served as a powerful ally in high-stress situations. He glanced around the room at his team, feeling the gravity of leadership weigh heavier on his shoulders. They had gathered for much more than just a mission. They were here to reclaim agency over their narratives, to defend those silenced by fear. "I want each of you to talk to your connections. Find out if you can sniff out anything. We need to understand the landscape before we act." As the team broke off into smaller clusters, Jake felt the pull of doubt creep back in. What if this whole operation crumbled under the weight of misinformation? But every time he fell into the spiral of despair, he visualized Maverick. With those intelligent eyes shining bright, the dog embodied a form of hope that he needed to channel. Collaborating with each member was invigorating. They bounced ideas off one another, re-imaging their strategy. As Jake worked alongside the team, exchanging thoughts anchored in purpose, a wild concept sparked within him. What if they could use Maverick and the other dogs, not just as agents of detection, but as ambassadors? "Let's stage a demonstration," he proposed, his pulse quickening. "We can show our witness the strength and courage of these dogs. Let them see they are not alone. It can serve to encourage not just our witness, but the community around." The team caught on quickly. Ideas flowed as they solidified a plan for an event. They would invite community members, allowing the dogs to showcase their abilities. "Jake, this could backfire," Collins cautioned, though his voice lacked conviction. "Isn't there a risk that it brings even more attention to us?" Jake's fiery determination flared. "We need to turn this tide. The presence of the dogs can represent resilience. It can be a beacon for those feeling trapped." He felt the tension lift, the momentum build. As they plotted their next steps, one idea sparked immediate apprehension. What if we use the media? Maybe try to plant information that depicts the dogs as part of a greater protective initiative. It could garner public support, but also bring scrutiny. They pressed on, and Jake could sense the shift within himself. This was no longer just about going through the motions. They were on the precipice of something impactful. As he prepared for the upcoming demonstration, a tight knot of anxiety formed in his stomach. Each moment pulled him closer to the truth, pushing him to face uncomfortable questions about his motives and the risks he was willing to take. Despite the turmoil, Jake found a flicker of clarity. Every decision he made mattered, shifting his identity from mere participant to an active player in a larger narrative of change. He had something to prove, not just to the world outside, but to himself. Yet just as the plan began to solidify, another chilling text arrived. "We've confirmed a leak. Someone in your team has been compromised." Jake froze, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. They were not just up against external forces anymore. Betrayal lurked close, and the choices ahead might decide not just the outcome of their operation, but the very essence of who he was becoming. Who could he truly trust in this critical moment? Jake stood motionless, the screen of his phone illuminating his face with a cold blue light. The words hung in the air like a suspended sword, ready to drop at the slightest shift in the wind. "We've confirmed a leak." Those 5 words sent an electric jolt through him, igniting both anxiety and determination. He could feel his resolve swelling against the tide of doubt. He pocketed his phone, taking a deep breath as he scanned the room. The energy had shifted. Enthusiasm was replaced by palpable tension. If trust was a fragile glass, it had just been shattered. Jake needed to act decisively, but the layers of betrayal made his mind spin. Who among them was capable of compromising their mission? "Okay, team," he called out, regaining his grip on leadership, though the weight felt heavier now. "We have a security issue. We need to tighten our inner circle and tread carefully. No one should discuss any specifics outside of this room. I need your utmost discretion." The way his team responded showed their loyalty. Nodding heads, clenched fists, a collective determination that reassured him. Yet inside, Jake wrestled with a spiraling vortex of fear and frustration. They had come too far for it all to unravel now, but an unsettling truth lingered. The more he pushed for transparency among his team, the more secrets could surface. As they restructured their plan, Jake turned inward, reflecting on himself. What kind of leader was he if he couldn't anticipate fractures in trust? Part of him resented the vulnerability of reliance on others, the shadows of self-doubt clawing their way back. Being vulnerable made him an easier target, a traitor to his own growth. But it sparked an idea too powerful to ignore. Perhaps he could leverage this tension as a catalyst for authenticity. Regaining clarity amid chaos, he called for a one-on-one with each member. "I want to know what's on your minds. No filters, just the truth." He believed that confronting their insecurities as a team could redefine their paths forward. As they met, some found it difficult to distract from the fear looming over their heads, yet he discovered hidden frustrations, previously muffled voices yearning to be heard. Each conversation chipped away at the anxiety, revealing strength he hadn't recognized in his team. They weren't just dedicated, they were resilient. Then came the day of the demonstration, and Jake's heart raced with uncertainty. He had poured countless hours into reinforcing their mission. Standing in front of the audience, he watched as Maverick waited obediently by his side. The dog's instincts were more reliable than any analysis he could drum up, but what Jake observed in Maverick's calm gaze now echoed his own burgeoning courage. "Let's use this moment," he thought, magnetizing his focus back to the task. Maverick, in all his sentient glory, was not merely a dog. He was a symbol of solidarity. They had the potential to inspire courage in others, even in the face of betrayal. With each demonstration, he unlocked a piece of himself, realizing these moments were not just about securing a mission, but about becoming the leader he always aspired to be. He was beginning to understand that confidence comes with acknowledgement of vulnerabilities, a paradox he kept wrestling with. Just as the crowd began to engage, a sudden idea crashed over him, a realization that left him breathless. What if the leak was a misplaced distrust, a symptom of something larger? Could Jake have misjudged the source entirely, projecting his own insecurities onto those around him? Before he could process this new revelation further, his phone buzzed again. A message, more chilling than the last, found its way to his eyes. "Tomorrow, you'll find out who you can really trust." Jake's heart dropped. Tomorrow would be the day he confronted not just the leak, but also the deeper currents of fear threatening to drown him in decisions yet to come. He steadied his breath, feeling the crescendo of conflict swell within him, readying for an upheaval he couldn't yet fathom. The sun rose on a day charged with uncertainty. Jake lay awake long before the alarm buzzed, his mind racing with possibilities. Who could he still rely on? The previous night's flurry of emotions, hope, confusion, and worry, swirled around uneasily. He knew he needed to reach a new threshold of trust within himself and with his team, but the question lingered. How could he navigate the murky waters of betrayal? He stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing his resolve. "Leadership means stepping into the unknown," he whispered to his reflection. Today wasn't just about the leak. It was about forging a new paradigm of leadership within himself. He understood that the confrontation required both courage and candor. The ebb and flow of his thoughts nudged him toward a resolution he had avoided, confronting not just the betrayal itself, but the doubts that had gripped him so tightly. Upon arriving at the office, Jake felt the charged atmosphere as thicker than fog. Maverick sensed the tension, his tail tucking slightly as he padded beside Jake. Trust was fragile within the team, and the dawning reality of that weighed heavily on Jake's shoulders. He called everyone into the conference room, his heart pounding as they filed in one by one. "Today," he began, looking around the room to meet each gaze with intensity, "we are going to discuss our suspicions and fears openly. Today isn't about who blames whom. It's about acknowledging our weaknesses." The eyes of his colleagues bore into him, curiosity mixed with trepidation. "I want to start with my own trust issues," Jake continued. "I've let my fears control my judgment, and I've projected my insecurities onto you all. I'm here to reshape that narrative, but it starts with honesty." He watched as some members shifted uncomfortably, ready to leap into their defenses. But instead of pushing back, they began to speak, not just of the leak or fears, but of personal struggles and doubts they had encountered while working on the mission. One team member, Carla, spoke of her insecurity around answering questions from upper management, while another, Thomas, revealed the pressure he felt to outperform expectations. They were peeling back layers, showing a vulnerability that mirrored his own. As the conversation unfolded, Jake realized he wasn't simply guiding them. He was stepping into a deeper understanding of collaboration. He wasn't just their leader. He was their teammate, willing to shoulder the weight of failure together. "Would it help if we had a regular check-in, a space where we can come together and be transparent?" one member suggested hesitantly, and a slow wave of agreement spread through the room. Ideas mingled with shared laughter and tentative smiles as the air around them transformed. What was once suffocating became suffused with possibility. Determined to solidify this newfound connection, Jake formulated plans to implement continuous dialogues, establishing a rhythm of accountability. Their personal experiences woven together could arm them against any unforeseen betrayals. Just as Jake felt a glimmer of triumph, a notification pinged on his phone, shaking him back to reality. He opened the message cautiously, almost too afraid to confront its contents. "Tonight, it begins. You'll understand the full scope of the betrayal. Get ready." The walls felt as though they were closing in around him, and the optimism he had started to cultivate curdled into dread. He stood frozen, his blood running cold, while his thoughts raced. What truth was waiting to be uncovered? Repeating the mantra in his mind didn't quell his rising fears. He felt the pressure mount. The confrontation he had prepared for was one thing, but now it escalated into something darker, an unraveling he hadn't expected. What was about to come to light may not just redefine his role as a leader. It could shatter the very foundation of the trust they had begun to build. Tomorrow was no longer about revealing a leak. It was about confronting shadows that threatened to consume them all. Who among them would emerge as an ally, and who would reveal themselves to be a foe? The countdown had begun, and the clock was ticking ominously toward nightfall. Jake paced his office, the walls closing in as his thoughts churned. The implications of that message echoed relentlessly in his mind. A sudden urgency gripped him. He needed more than to prepare for the evening's confrontation. He had to cultivate resilience in himself and his team. It was no longer just about trust. It was about survival in the face of betrayal. He grabbed a notebook and started jotting down a plan. The first step was clear. He had to gather information before confronting anyone. Knowledge was power, especially now. With recent revelations swirling within the team, he realized that the shadows of doubt needed to be addressed head-on. If the betrayal ran deeper than he anticipated, he needed a strategy that enabled him to protect his integrity and ensure the team's core remained intact. Maverick watched from the corner, sensing Jake's turmoil. His presence was a calming force, and for a fleeting moment, Jake allowed himself a brief distraction by tossing a tennis ball. Maverick dashed after it, tail wagging like a beacon of hope. The dog's unyielding enthusiasm reminded Jake of the spirit he had chosen to lead. If he could harness even a fraction of that energy, he could transform this dark potential into a catalyst for growth. Instead of spiraling down the rabbit hole of fear, Jake decided to take proactive steps. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he started drafting an anonymous survey for his team, aiming to gauge their feelings about trust, issues they had experienced, and how they perceived the team's dynamics. The objective wasn't merely to seek input, but to initiate open dialogue that might expose hidden tensions while recognizing unvoiced concerns. With each question he crafted, he felt his resolve firming. This wasn't just about confronting shadows. This was an opportunity for genuine leadership. He sent the survey out, hoping that it would serve as a lifeline for those struggling silently. The responses trickled in, each more insightful than the last. Team members expressed fears of inadequacy, failing to meet expectations, and even suspicions of one another. Each revelation added to his understanding of the fissures within the team. The more he read, the more he understood that the truth could be a powerful uniting thread, a shared challenge that could foster a newfound solidarity. As the daylight waned, anticipation turned to anxiety. His heart raced at the thought of confronting the issue directly, perhaps not knowing who among them had truly sought to sabotage their efforts. He had prepared for his message earlier in the day, but standing at the precipice of real confrontation forced him to rethink his approach. Leadership required showing vulnerability, and he would need to keep the lines of communication open throughout the night. Jake found himself standing in front of the team once again, but this time his demeanor was different. There was an urgency in his voice, and as he articulated their shared challenges and the need for honesty, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. This isn't just about trust. It's about confronting the darkness and deciding how we face it together. Tonight, let's dig deeper as a team. As the dialogue began, voices of concern echoed, masks peeling back to reveal raw emotions. The tension shifted. Where there had been fear, there was now acknowledgement. But just as clarity began to settle, Jake's phone buzzed again. It was a message from an unknown number, chilling in its brevity. "You don't know everything yet. Be prepared for the worst." The weight of those words hung heavily in the air. What lay beyond the shadows remained unknown. Who could he trust? With his heart racing and the room pulsating with a mixture of hope and apprehension, Jake realized that navigating this betrayal would demand more than just transparency. The tests of loyalty and authenticity were upon them. The time had come to face the real enemy, lurking in the shadows of both their fears and ambitions. By the time Jake stepped into the dimly lit gathering, a shift had taken place. Where once lay a tense air thick with uncertainty, there now existed an undeniable current of resolve. The weight upon his shoulders felt lighter as he looked around at his team, the bond forged through shared vulnerability, transcending their previous fears. On this evening, they were not merely colleagues. They were a coalition united by a purpose much greater than themselves. "Tonight," Jake began, his voice steady, "is about confronting the truth, not just about the leak, but about who we are as a team. The strength we found in our vulnerabilities can fortify us against any challenges ahead." He scanned the faces before him, soaking in the determination that had replaced their earlier hesitations. With each word, Jake felt his confidence solidify more. This was his moment of culmination, where purpose met clarity, and it was not just about him or the mission at hand. It was about creating a network of trust that could withstand even the toughest storms. As they began to share their theories about the leak, a new element emerged, not suspicion of one another, but a collective commitment to opposing any betrayal within their ranks. "We can't let fear divide us," Jake urged, igniting a spark in the room. "If we work together and communicate honestly, nothing can undermine our mission." Hours passed as they discussed tactics, intervention strategies, and plans for the dawn's operations. Ideas flourished, revitalizing the atmosphere and transforming their apprehension into a palpable energy for engagement. Each member unveiled their strengths, showing that this group could indeed outsmart the external forces at play. Yet amid the harmony merging their contributions, a tightness lingered in Jake's chest, the ominous message from earlier refusing to fade from his mind. Who among them might betray that trust? Was it someone present in the room? The darkness that had initially cloaked his uncertainty began to rekindle, but rather than succumb to the suffocating spiral, he chose to confront it. Once the discussions faded, Jake gathered everyone's attention once more. "Tomorrow, we will move forward with our plan. But I must ask us to remain vigilant. We're stepping into a storm, and understanding the nuances of trust will be our compass." He could see the determination renewed in their eyes. Consensus formed, a true sense of ownership and purpose among them. This was not merely about exposing systemic injustice anymore. It was about standing shoulder to shoulder against the unseen forces threatening to tear them apart. They concluded the meeting with a sense of resurgence, a night of growth and articulation, anchoring them for the journey ahead. Jake returned home, the resonance of his team's solidarity sheltering him from past fears. He felt empowered, the dark corners of his mind receding, the whispers of self-doubt quieting. As dawn broke, the air heavy with anticipation, Jake felt an urgency pulsing through him. The moment had arrived to transition from strategy into action. He prepared himself and Maverick, the bond between them now a source of unwavering support. There was a new confidence in him, a steadfast acceptance of both the peril and the purpose. At the location designated for the demonstration, community members began to gather, their faces apprehensive yet hopeful. Jake saw families, friends, and allies of those he sought to protect. All of them casting eyes steeped in gravity, their expectations weighing heavily on him. In that instant he recognized the truth. This was not just about the dogs or the operation. It was about the essence of humanity that united them all. As Jake launched into the opening remarks, the sound of his own voice seemed to rise above the tension. Each of us has been touched by the darkness that lives in fear and division. But today, we stand together not just as individuals, but as a community ready to forge a new narrative. He watched as the crowd began to lean in, his words illuminating the path to a brighter future. In the distance, he noticed a few suspicious figures lurking near the back, a dangerous reminder that the threat was not behind them, but present and watching. Tension flared within him momentarily, a flurry of fears attempting resurfacing, but something profound grounded him. He was prepared. He was not on this journey alone. As the dogs rallied around him, demonstrating their prowess, a wave of emotions swept through him, punctuated by the palpable support of the crowd, their cheers becoming a powerful wave of solidarity. Every bark, every wag of the tail represented resilience, a dynamic energy that drowned out the shadows of doubt that still lingered within his mind. With the community standing by him, the purpose transformed from something personal to a shared mission, a testament to the courage found through honesty and collaboration. This moment crystallized everything he fought against in silence. As Jake discovered his own integrity, he was also providing his town with the power to reclaim their narrative. The challenge ahead would not be easy, but Jake's heart swelled with undeniable pride as he looked around. He had found his calling, not merely to lead, but to uplift and empower others, demonstrating that together they could rise against adversity. This was not just a demonstration, it was a declaration of resilience, courage, and transformation. And as the crowd erupted in applause, Jake understood and felt the undeniable truth. He had conquered his own fears, reclaimed his voice, and achieved a profound sense of fulfillment that transcended anything he had known before. He had emerged not just as a leader burdened by doubt, but as a fierce beacon of hope for a community that had almost forgotten it could stand united against darkness. Now was the time for action, and this was just the beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.